Hey folks, it's Ray with Taste Radio. Right now I'm honored to be sitting down with Ben Witte, the founder and CEO of Recess. Ben, great to see you.
Great to see you too. Excited for our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I should say great to see you again. We chatted last week, and prior to that, we've chatted a few times. The first time we spoke was in 2019 for an episode of Taste Radio. Recess was 3.5 months into its debut, I think, at that point, and we caught up in New York City at your office. You're based in LA now, though.
Yep, that's right. It was a COVID move that lasted longer than expected.
Well, it's appropriate for your brand. LA is pretty chill. Recess
Yeah,
is all about chill.
exactly.
Yeah. You know, I look back to that time in 2019. This was about 5.5 years ago. And I recall there was just so much hype about the brand at the time. It was one of the first times people had seen a CBD infused or a hemp infused beverage, and Recess was considered the anchor of that emerging set. In fact, at the time, people were calling the brand the Lacroix of CBD. And it was a bit of a misnomer, though, because the whole concept, the idea behind Recess was not specifically about CBD. Let's go back in time for a second and talk about the origins of the brand and how you envisioned it as a beverage company.
Yeah. So, first my background, didn't come from CPG. Spent the first 6 years of my career in Silicon Valley in the early stage kind of tech startup world. Kind of got hooked on entrepreneurship and, knew I wanted to start my own company, but also recognized kind of my passions and strengths were better suited, for the consumer space. I've always been, more of a creative at heart. And so kind of went out on my own in around 2016 to kind of explore different ideas. And that's when it started to feel to me like we were entering this new period in history driven by technology, and it was leaving everyone stressed out and anxious. Trump had just been elected, which I kind of viewed as the ultimate expression of anxiety. And so I just had this high level thesis that, in the future that we were entering, people would be prioritizing their mental wellness and looking for healthier ways to reduce stress and relax, as compared to things like alcohol or even tobacco, or other kind of pre-existing kind of unhealthy forms of relaxation. Shortly thereafter, I observed the rise of CBD oil, adaptogenic herbs, magnesium, nootropics, even THC, essentially this new class of functional ingredient that was primarily in supplement form, that people were using to reduce stress, to feel calm, and to relax. And kind of the light bulb moment was, Red Bull for relaxation. Basically view these, emerging ingredients as, the inputs into this entirely new space of consumer products that would deliver, this value proposition of healthy relaxation. And I think that's an important, distinction and insight in the sense that I really never viewed Recess or the space, back then as the CBD beverage space. I would always say I've never heard anyone call Red Bull a caffeine company. It's an energy company. They were marketing, the solution and not the ingredient, and obviously built an entire kind of lifestyle brand to market, the product to consumers. And so, I took a very expansive view of what was going to emerge here, that again, I defined as the healthy relaxation product space, and that it would be comprised of products across, a number of formats, whether it's RTD beverages, powders, gummies, shots, you name it. That would also be kind of segmented by ingredient type and occasion, whether it's alcohol alternatives, stress relief, sleep. To me, these are all kind of nuanced propositions within the broader kind of relaxation space. And so I think that kind of view of the space, that was going to emerge, over the years to come, really drove, our strategy, whether it was, the original, product line, which included CBD in it, but really we leaned into, marketing, the feeling of relaxation and, defining the feeling, as calm, cool, collected, instead of marketing, the ingredients, and then ultimately kind of building, a lifestyle brand world, around the beverage to, connect with consumers. And so I think, that's how I thought about, the original, opportunity for what became Recess. And I think that view of the broad space that was going to emerge really has driven our strategy over the past kind of 5 years.
Certainly, being the Red Bull of relaxation is very different than being the Lacroix of CBD. And I agree with you, it's probably better to be the former than the latter. But to be fair, when Red Bull launched in the United States, I don't think many people had heard of the term energy drink. There were highly caffeinated beverages at the time, but Red Bull, in a sense, launched the category in the United States. Whereas I think relaxation beverages are interesting because there had been relaxation beverages prior to Recess. I don't even know if you could call it a category, but there were a handful of products that came out. I mentioned the word chill. The brand that I think of when I think about relaxation beverages was Just Chill, which was on the market for a short amount of time.
Yeah. Look, I think so much of, business overall, and especially, in the CPG space comes down, to the timing, right? And I know Max Bauman well, and he definitely, did, originally, pioneer the concept of a relaxation beverage with Just Chill. But I believe he launched it in 2009 or 2010. And L-theanine was, the only kind of functional ingredient in there. And so I just don't think back then kind of mental wellness, stress, anxiety were kind of top of mind for consumers. I think you really needed the world to get a little crazier, over the next 6 years for it to be kind of a proposition that consumers would be interested in. In addition to that, I think I think that original kind of CBD wave in 2019, I think was useful, right? Because it kind of established CBD, and then also these other functional ingredients, like L-theanine and adaptogens, as functional ingredients that people were using again for this proposition of stress relief. And so we rode that original kind of CBD wave, in 2019, which kind of helped establish the brand. But importantly, again, we were not marketing the ingredient. We were really focused on kind of marketing the feeling, again, that we defined it as calm, cool, collected. And so I think it was a combination of factors. Again, I think that 2018, 2019 period was just a better moment in time to really launch and execute on a relaxation beverage. I think you needed additional ingredients besides just L-theanine to be able to infuse it to deliver that proposition. And then I also think, our approach was the right approach in terms of, the brand of Recess, leaning into the idea of taking a Recess, launching, but, originally direct to consumer, and then, immediately moving into New York City, where we first kind of established, the retail business and kind of the up and down the street accounts there. And so I think there's just a variety of factors at play that made, when we launched, kind of the right time to really establish this category.
I want to unpack a couple of things you said there. First of all, you said you never really focused on CBD as being the most important part or the focus of Recess, but a lot of other people did. Whether it was the New York Times or People Magazine or what have you, everyone always associated one term with the other, CBD with Recess. How hard was that to shed, especially once you got into 2020, 2021 and got into new categories like, your mood beverages, which are enhanced with magnesium, or your non-alcoholic cocktails? I mean, do people still associate Recess with CBD because of all that hype from the outset?
Like, it was one of these things where I feel like the press and, perhaps some distributors perceived us as a CBD beverage, but it was very clear to me that consumers were not, right? I think one of the most important things when you're building, a consumer brand is to listen to your customers, right? And one of the things we always had was just a tremendous amount of user-generated content, in Instagram at the time. And it was just obvious that people were not, talking about Recess as a CBD beverage. They were really leaning into the usage occasion of, relaxing at the end of the day or, in the afternoon, and the feeling, that we delivered, right? And so I do think there was this disconnect from, how consumers thought about the brand and how it fit into their lives versus how the press thought about us, and perhaps how some distributors and retailers thought about us. And again, I just, think from first principles here. Again, if why wouldn't they have called the energy drink category the caffeine category? I think there's a lot of parallels here. Red energy drinks also have chlorine, in them too. So they're really combining, different functional ingredients together to deliver that stimulation effect, just like we combined, different functional ingredients to deliver, that relaxation effect. And so have always believed that we were somewhat of a misunderstood brand, from the earliest days. And so I think there's more to shake with, again, the press and distributors than with consumers.
Yeah, and I want to talk about brand building because I mean that was the first thing I noticed when I saw Recess was this was an amazing brand. Still is obviously an amazing brand, but from your packaging to the vibe to just the core of what the brand represented felt so novel. And in some ways, it felt very specific. It felt like this was for a new type of consumer. It was for that younger type of consumer, the millennial brand, so to speak. It's grown beyond a age demographic, I would say. But talk about the idea of creating something that would resonate with a specific group at the outset and be flexible enough to talk to other folks.
Yeah. I do believe in the importance of, focus, to begin. And I think, look, there's two additional insights, I think unique insights at the time, besides just the, premise of a relaxation drink. Back in 2018, having come from Silicon Valley and kind of the tech world, I was really shocked that no one was talking about both kind of e-commerce as an initial kind of distribution channel, and also the opportunity to leverage social media, at the time, just Instagram and Facebook, for kind of digital brand building, right? And so, we launched the company out of my apartment, direct to consumer. And I think we were one of the first kind of true digitally native, beverage brands. And we really focused on kind of our Instagram strategy to begin, and created this, pretty compelling, brand world in Instagram that clearly, connected with consumers and, got a lot of virality to it. And so that kind of helped kind of put us on the map. And then, we moved into New York as our first retail market. And we were really focused, to begin on kind of the creative community, in New York. And I do think there's a lot of benefits to going deep, first before you kind of expand. And that's what we really did. Our first year, in New York City, we did a pop-up in New York called Recess IRL, which was quite impactful.
Love that place. I visited and I felt like I was in, I don't know, some sort of magical room. But well, it was more than just a room, but it was very different.
Yeah.
Than any kind of IRL experience I had seen before.
Yeah, and one of my beliefs is like being unique is very underappreciated in the CPG world, right? I
It's
think
very
there's
hard too. Very hard to be on. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think, being unique is kind of how you break through and kind of how you, ultimately create value. There's a lot of Me Too brands, and if you're just, putting basically acting like everyone else, you're just gonna, not be able to break through, right? And so we were really focused on, thinking differently, thinking from first principles, being willing to, reject the conventional wisdom, when it made sense. And that's what I think, again, kind of helped put us on the map, that this first 12 months.
Digitally native brand. I think of another digitally native brand, and I'm not picking on them, but they haven't done as well as Recess. They weren't able to scale in the same way that Recess was, and that was Dirty Lemon. What did you do right in your mind? What did you do right from a digital perspective that helped you get to a place where you are now, where you're still doing quite well digitally? I mean, when we spoke last, I think you said it's over 50% of your business is online at this point.
Yeah. Look, I think Dirty Lemon thought about themselves as a pure kind of direct-to-consumer brand, when I never viewed ourselves as a direct-to-consumer brand. I viewed it as a digitally native omnichannel brand, right? Where you'd want to kind of establish the brand awareness and drive trial, with consumers online before you went offline, right? And so I think that the simple kind of distinction of thinking of ourselves as an omnichannel brand, not a direct-to-consumer brand, was the right approach, right? Obviously, beverages, are unique in the sense that, beverages get more distribution than literally any other product on earth, right? Why is Coca-Cola the biggest brand in the world? Well, it's because it's, always around you, right? And I think that's, beverages that succeed, ultimately, get to scale, offline. But I think there are significant benefits to also having a strong kind of e-commerce business as well that I can talk about.
Yeah, I want to get to that and how you've been able to create such demand on platforms like Amazon. But I do want to back up for a sec because in 2019 and probably a little bit into 2020, I think the idea, the concept that you had was still a bit of a thesis. No,
Yes.
proving the concept, identifying the trends that you could say and point to as, yes, this is proving out my belief that relaxation can be a big category, can be the next big beverage trend, happened after that. How did you go about proving out your thesis in so many ways?
Yeah. Look, it was obviously a thesis, that I had, before we launched it. But to me, like within, a few weeks, it was pretty clear, that the idea was connecting with consumers, in the way, we intended it to. And again, I really believe looking at your user-generated content and really tracking how consumers kind of talk about your brand and in social media is the most kind of valuable, data and set of insights, that you can have, right? And so, again, within, short order, it was just very clear to me that people were drinking recess, to relax and unwind, which was really this kind of fundamentally new kind of value proposition. Back then, I would cite, to me, I think back then it started to become clear that mental well-being was this kind of health outcome that consumers were increasingly kind of adjusting their lifestyle around, right? Back then, you started to see the rise of things like therapy or mindfulness, which were had gone from very taboo to talk about to very accepted to talk about. And so what I believed is that idea would make its way, into the products, that we consume. I would also cite, products like Calm magnesium powder, right? Calm magnesium powder was a brand that was owned by Clorox. That was, I think at the time, $100 million a year business. And kind of the insight that drove, Recess Mood was people were drinking, the original version of Recess and Calm magnesium powder for the exact same reason, to feel calm. And that's what, inspired me to go explore magnesium and also explore powders, right? And so I think connecting dots is very important. And that's not, back then that was definitely not showing up in the SPINS data, right? That was more looking at, these other things that were happening, broadly, in society, right? That kind of, that again kind of helped kind of validate, my thesis. One of our taglines is an antidote to modern times, right? The premise that, like I shared at the beginning, that we were entering, increasingly stressful times as a result of a rapidly changing world, and people would be looking for, various solutions to help them, reduce stress, and relax, right? And so I was just, always deeply believed, in kind of the vision that, me and the team had here, and that, every day that went by, we were getting kind of validation of that. And so I think kind of having kind of conviction is very important. And then, one of my favorite lines is this Jeff Bezos line. He said, it's important, basically to do anything kind of truly innovative, you have to be willing to be misunderstood for long periods of time. And that's how I kind of feel the Recess, story has been to an extent, right? You look at the bet we made on magnesium, in 2020. No one was talking about magnesium at the time, and to me, it was this secret hidden in plain sight, right? Just look at the brand Calm, right? That's all you had to do, right? And so I think it's identifying kind of unique insights before they're obvious to the market. I think is fundamentally the job of the entrepreneur, right? Because if it's obvious, then it's probably already established, and everyone's doing it, and you're not going to be, unique and, differentiated enough to, build something, truly valuable. That said, look, I think there's two different business plans, in CPG. You can either go into an existing category that's established, and try and capture market share, like Prime did, for example, in, the sports drink space. Or you can, and many other examples of that, or you can, lead the development, of a new space or a subcategory within an existing space, like Liquid Death did, within water, with kind of a unique dimension, in cans to begin, but, ultimately it was, very much a brand play. So I really encourage, I really believe in the importance of, figuring out what is your unique insights, that you have that's going to ultimately drive your strategy, and your brand positioning, and really, really lean into those.
How did the public perceive, how did consumers perceive, a magnesium enhanced beverage or magnesium infused beverage, and think about it not just as like, some sort of functional product, but as something that they could incorporate into their lives, into their daily lives, into their
Yeah.
daily lifestyles?
Yeah, I mean, look, what really, I will take a step back. I always had the vision that Recess would become a brand platform. And I did have a view that I think platform brands, would be a bigger and bigger part of the future. And I use this simple example that, our URL and our Instagram was take a recess, not drink recess,
Right.
right? Because the vision was there would be many forms of recess that we could create over time. And what really accelerated the vision, of becoming a platform was, ultimately the lack of regulatory clarity on a federal level for CBD, which prevented us from entering the national retailers and Amazon, right? So we had this, I'd say a business challenge, right? In the sense that we had a product that consumers loved and was working, online and at retail, but we couldn't scale it into the places where, frankly, 95% of the volume comes from, which is the big box retailers and Amazon. And so, fortunately, I think I had the right view, of the space, and thinking of it as the relaxation space and thinking of Recess as a relaxation brand, and kind of accelerated, again, the platform vision, with the launch of Recess Mood, which was fully compliant, on a federal level and allowed us to enter, the national retailers. But that said, look, it took time, right? We first had to, again, validate, with consumers, that they, valued the idea, and that they delivered, the same, if not better efficacy. In some ways, I actually think magnesium's, more efficacious, than CBD. And then, also have the right positioning, right? Even in retrospect, it was obvious to pivot, beyond CBD, and many of the other CBD companies did, but many of them pivoted into immunity at the time because that was the hot thing, because of COVID, right? But our vision was, to continue to build Recess as a relaxation brand. And look, it was just one foot in front of the other. Like, let's, first launch it online, then launch it, in retail, originally kind of in the independent accounts. And then we started to get into some, regional chains, and then, the national retailers. And, ultimately the most important metric, in beverage is your retail sales velocity. And those were always, strong, for us. And so, while, over time, we just had a data story to be able to continue to share, with buyers, and they started to pay attention, to the Recess brand. And then, also I think, they understood the trends around the, people that were shopping in their stores, were struggling with mental health. They were looking for healthier ways to reduce stress, relax, and kind of moderate their alcohol consumption. And I think it was almost a situation where the consumer was ahead of the market, right? And we really kind of met the consumer, where they are, and had the right approach from a brand positioning standpoint and a formulation standpoint. And, it's obviously, really started to take off.
I feel like that data story becomes a lot stronger when you are or getting prime placement for the brand. And prime placement these days means being aligned with or next to fast growing brands like a Poppy, an Olipop, even a Liquid Death, where I do see recess. I mean,
Mhm.
if I go into, any mainstream retailer or natural retailer, I start to see like they're all together,
Yep.
which is kind of surprising. I mean, how did you convince, or did you have to convince retail buyers that merchandising recess next to or near these other brands was the right idea?
Yeah, look, I think we are extremely complementary to Poppy and Olipop. We're definitely not competitors. Those are fundamentally kind of healthy soda brands first, and probiotic soda brands second, in my opinion. And we're a relaxation brand. And one of the behaviors we often see is that a consumer will grab a Poppy or Olipop and recess in the same store visit. And the consumer behavior is they're going to drink their Poppy or Olipop, maybe at lunch, or during the day, and they'll enjoy their recess mood in the evening instead of a glass of wine, right? And so we really view them as complementary brands to us with a very similar kind of customer profile. So we really love kind of being next to them. Another point is I think it's somewhat overstated that you need a established kind of category to exist, right? Obviously, there wasn't a relaxation or mood enhancement category in the beverage, section at retail. There was in the supplement section, with brands like Palm and Ollie gummies, but there wasn't, in the beverage section. But just like there wasn't a healthy soda section, right? When Poppy and Olipop launched, they really took space, from kombucha. Beverage, sales and merchandising is like kind of hand-to-hand combat, right? You're good, we have a field sales team that are going into stores every single day, and you're kind of fighting for space. I think the categories are, broader than I think is conventional wisdom. Oftentimes we're in, it's the broad functional beverage set or the enhanced water set, right? And obviously recess mood kind of fits both of those definitions. So those are, I'd say, factors that really led us to, for that line to be merchandised next to Poppy and Olipop, which again, we love and we respect those brands, but view them as ultimately complementary brands, not competitive brands.
I like that you brought up usage occasion. You had already, but you brought up, recess mood as a potentially evening beverage for folks. I mean, I would drink a recess mood with my lunch. I mean,
Yeah.
I could have that just as easily as a sparkling water or a better for you soda. But when I think about that evening occasion, I do think that your non-alc, your mocktails are probably what I would reach for first. Did you, when you were building out the platform, did you think about that daytime occasion, that evening occasion, as much as you did, hey, I'm trying to create a platform, that can fit the term relaxation holistically?
Yeah. But so let's just start with like, what is the definition of relaxation? Because I think it's, I think that, some people think of relaxation as just like sitting on the couch, right, and chilling out to like that. But the definition of relaxation is, being free from tension and anxiety, right? And I think I think one of the unique insights is that many occasions for alcohol are fundamentally about relaxation, right? When you're trying to relax at the end of the day, traditionally people would often turn to a glass of wine, to enjoy, before dinner, with dinner, or after dinner to kind of relax, unwind, and take the edge off. But, even, on a weekend, with friends, when you're hanging in the park, right? You're also looking to, relax and unwind, in a slightly nuanced, way compared to, a weeknight. So I do think of the world. I'm a really big believer in the importance of honing in on specific usage occasions, and day parts, and that's really kind of driven our strategy. I can maybe talk about kind of what inspired the mocktail line, if that would be beneficial.
If you can talk about it while I sip on one of them, yes, you can do that, because I have already sipped on your Island Spritz variety, which is a relatively new variety. And to be clear, this is called Recess Zero Proof. It's described as a craft mocktail. This one is infused with guayusa and adaptogens. It's lightly sparkling, obviously 0% ABV. So yes, Ben, have at it while I relax with my craft mocktail here.
Yeah. So look, shortly after we launched, Recess Mood, we had already identified as kind of evening relaxation as kind of the primary usage occasion. But again, people were also drinking it, during the day, whether it's in the afternoon instead of a coffee or, at lunch. But I really, started to see, the not that kind of alcohol alternative space, and, alcohol moderation as a movement kind of begin to accelerate, and it was really driven by athletic brewing to begin during COVID back in that kind of 2020 era, and I developed a very simple mental model, which was at the end of the day, non-alcoholic beer sits on the other side of alcoholic beer, right? And alcoholic beer sales, I think are beginning to decline at that time. And so my insights was, at the end of the day, non-alc beer is fighting for share of a shrinking pie, right? And where was alcoholic sales kind of shifting to? It was hard seltzer and ready-to-drink cocktails, driven by brands like White Claw, High Noon, Cutwater, Topo Chico, increasingly. And so my insight was that just like athletic brewing sits on the other side of alcoholic beer, there would be an RTD mocktail category that sat on the other side of RTD cocktails, right? And you'd already started to see brands like Kin and Gia and other brands like that that were more positioned as elixirs, euphorics, social tonics. But I really I saw the opportunity for us to lean into recreating the most popular cocktail flavors, like a margarita, like a Paloma, like a Mule, like a Mojito, like now a Cosmo, but without the alcohol and enhanced with functional ingredients that deliver a balanced buzz, some of the good parts of the feeling that alcohol can deliver, but without, the consequences. And I think, I think one of the reasons, non-alc beer has been so successful is it's a very simple idea to understand, right? It's beer without the alcohol. And I think our mocktail line, is the same. It's a very clear brand positioning and value proposition, again, in the sense that we're recreating the most popular cocktail flavors, again, but without the alcohol. And so we first started to experiment with that in 2021, where we launched a limited edition, Recess Margarita as a part of our CBD line, actually, for Dry January, and it sold out immediately, and consumers were kind of obsessed with it, right? And I think there's something around familiarity, again, with consumers, that's driven the success of non-alc beer, but also Poppy and Olipop, right? Those are really recreating soda flavors in a better for you fashion. And so after that launch, I'm like, I really think there's going to be something here. So we had just launched Recess Mood, so it was too early to really launch, another product line. But I was confident that this, the RTD mocktail subcategory within the broader alcohol alternative space would emerge. We started, working on formulations over that year. And launched that line, I believe it was, 15 months ago or so. And it's already well over 30%, of our sales. And I think, we're by far the biggest alcohol alternative brand on Amazon. I'm pretty sure we're the biggest, RTD mocktail kind of elixir brand, when you take into account Amazon, and retail. And that product line's, doing very well. But it fits us, the way I think about it is it fits, a distinct kind of usage occasion, from Recess Mood. In addition to kind of evening, relaxation, which is definitely an occasion for the mocktails, we see them playing in more kind of social occasions. The places you would traditionally drink White Claw or High Noon, whether that's at the park, the beach, the pool, dinner parties, increasingly, on-premise festivals, places like that. We're really seeing them, do well in. And one of my beliefs is I think I've never liked the term sober curious, for example, because I think the much bigger trend is moderation, not elimination, right? I think there is a growing segment of people that's obviously not drinking at all, but I think the much bigger market is that people looking to drink less, fewer nights per week, and then fewer drinks per night, right? So one of the behaviors that we see is this kind of switch off effect, where if you're at the pool with friends, people are going to have their High Noons and their Recess mocktails and kind of switch off in between, right? So they're not getting out of control and they're not as hungover the next day. right? And so those are kind of the occasions where kind of the mocktails are really focused on playing in.
Yeah, the term I heard a long time ago is flex sober. I don't know if sober is the right word for it, but
Yeah.
yes, switching off, going between one beverage and the other, and trying to find some sort of balance more than one extreme or the other.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that really amazed me about the zero proof line, the mocktail line, is that they just taste amazing. You guys just really nailed the flavor. This Island Spritz in particular, I mentioned this in a past episode of the podcast, has that pina colada vibe that is the complete opposite of that saccharine, overly sweet product. This is very refreshing and has so much flavor attached to it. And then I wonder, especially for a line like this where it's already 30% of your business, only 15 months old, how you got people to try this, especially when a lot of your business is still online. Talk about the trial strategy for both Mood and the mocktail line.
Look, I think while 50% of our sales are still online, we are in about 18,000 retailers, right? Over the past 18 months, we've moved into Target, Albertsons, Wegmans, HEB, Fresh Market, CVS, many of the biggest retailers where we're seeing just incredibly strong performance. And one of the things we're seeing at retail is retailers bringing in multiple product lines. Right. So a retailer like Wegmans has, all three product lines: Recess Mood, the powders, and the mocktails. HEB, same thing. Recess Mood just went national at Albertsons Safeway across all banners, and many of those divisions, also have the mocktails. And there's many other kind of retailers where that's the case. And so I think, one of my beliefs, and I think our competitive advantage is the benefits of this platform strategy. We have an established kind of distribution network. We have an established kind of retail base. We have an established kind of digital presence, whether it's, in social media or email lists, kind of our Amazon business. And so when we launch a product now, it grows rapidly. I think it took the Recess mocktails 3 months to get to the same scale, in the natural channel as it took Recess Mood 18 months, right? So we were basically able to, very, very quickly get it into, most doors that the Recess Mood line was already in, right? Which I think is, again, a testament to the power of a brand platform. And so I think, there's a variety of ways kind of we drive trial, again, whether it's online or being able to kind of enter the retail market quickly, with them. But it's really exciting to see kind of the platform strategy really working.
Yeah, and again, your consumers are telling you they like it. They post pictures of it and videos of it online. They talk about how much they love the flavor or the function, the fact that they can, replace their alcoholic beverage in the case of the mocktails with a Recess. And you're following all that. But as consumers evolve, so does their interaction with a brand. From 2019 to 2024, how has that interaction changed? How has your communication with consumers evolved, and how have you adjusted your social media and marketing strategy overall, to better talk to people who are buying your product?
Yep. Look, I think 2019, we were really more focused on kind of traditional kind of brand marketing, right? To really just establish, the brand originally in New York City, both with our content strategy, our pop-up and different collaborations, that we did. But once COVID came, and we really shifted more towards, purely, online business, for a period of time, because, New York City kind of emptied out. The past couple of years, we've really been focused, almost exclusively on performance marketing to drive the e-commerce business. And that's why I'm such a big believer in the power of having, a scalable and, profitable e-commerce business, which we do, which is, all of the media that we're spending to drive our Amazon business also benefits retail, right? So we're generating tens of millions of impressions a month online, to drive our Amazon business, which is profitable, and those impressions also benefit retail, right? And so I have this, one of my frameworks is, in beverage, one of the most important metrics is, basically how can you generate, the most amount of impactful brand impressions for the least amount of money, right? And if you have a ROI positive, e-commerce business and, the campaigns that you're running to drive it are generating return on investment, well, that money is kind of paying for itself, right? And so it's kind of, those are, impressions that we're able, to generate on an ongoing basis that also benefit retail. And so that's I'd say kind of a secret, not a secret. There's other brands that, think this way too, like a Poppy or, Liquid Death, to an extent. But we've really not done much brand marketing in the past couple of years. And, we're excited to kind of turn that back on, probably starting next year, now that our kind of retail business is getting to a scale, where it really makes sense. But I'd say that really the focus for the past few years has been kind of ROI positive performance marketing.
It sounds like you've spent quite a bit, or you continue to spend quite a bit on digital ads, and getting that right is something that I think a lot of brands have a hard time doing. A lot of founders talk about this is, how do I invest my resources online to get the biggest bang for my buck, to get that ROI that you were talking about? What's really clicked for Recess from a digital ads perspective?
I mentioned that we get, just a tremendous amount of kind of organic testimonials, from consumers within social media. One of the things we do is we'll re-engage, these people and ask them if we can use their video as a paid asset, Instagram or TikTok, or, we'll reach out to people that we think could be a great fit for the brand and kind of collaborate on a video that we then run media behind. I find that to be just a very powerful and impactful form of media and advertising that really, moves the needle. And again, I'm always thinking about like, what are things we can do that can benefit both the e-commerce business and the retail business? How can you get this kind of more bang for your buck, right? And I think that's a great example of that. I think having, your own channels are really important. I think we have something like 170,000 170,000 person email list now, right? And so just being able to have that channel to engage with our customers, is very powerful. We have 125,000 Instagram followers. I think those are important, even though I do think Instagram was much more impactful. It was easier to break through in Instagram back in 2018 and 2019 than it is today, right? I do think, the strategy, that we executed on back then is not necessarily the strategy, that would work well today. Like, the world does change, and you really have to kind of develop kind of a unique strategy for the moment in time that we're in, right? The world's now shifted to more of a short form video oriented world versus, static, Instagram post, which is, how we architected the brand. And so there's obviously an evolution that is ongoing that I think, we will continue to invest in. But, ultimately, I think viewing everything kind of holistically, right? It's not one thing that's going to, solve your problem or move the needles. It's really all of these things together. And we haven't even used celebrity yet, right? We haven't even, there's so many things we haven't even activated yet that I think are big, opportunities for us, in the future, that we've just been waiting to get to a scale, at retail, where that makes sense. And now that we're in many of the major retailers and kind of entering more, in the second half of this year and, expanding, in many of them, I'm excited to really expand the brand world and really turn up brand marketing, in a thoughtful way. We're not going to go, crazy like Liquid Death has, for example. But I think there's a lot we can do that will move the needle in a positive way.
You haven't activated celebrity yet. Anything you want to reveal or chat about yet, Ben?
Nothing yet. I mean, we've had all the record labels and talent agencies kind of trying to pair people with us, over the years. I do think celebrities, obviously there's 100 celebrity tequila brands and, alcohol brands. I think increasingly there's a number of them that want to be associated with, other types of products and benefits around, again, mental wellness, alcohol moderation, stress relief. I think those are, things that, a certain segment of talent and celebrity wants to be associated with. That's, organic and natural to them that they want to be advocates for. So I'm excited to ultimately kind of figure out kind of what makes sense for us.
We've been flying by, Ben. I can't believe that we're almost at the end of our time here, but I got to ask one more question. And that's about growing up from here, right? Like you've built a strong brand. You still have a ways to go. And I think, you would even admit that. But when it comes to going from a brand where 50% of your sales are still online to one where a solid majority of your sales are coming from brick and mortar, that's a big change for a brand. Going from click and fulfill to doing the blocking and tackling that, it requires to be in retail. How do you prepare yourself for that, especially when I know you do want more of your sales to eventually come from brick and mortar?
Yeah, look, I think it's about building out the team, right? Both kind of the infrastructure on the supply chain, and finance too, I think are very important to manage a true omnichannel business and you're working with many types of distributors, whether it's the national distributors, Unifying KeHE, or DSD distributors, and then importantly, field sales teams. Right, we have a 20-person field sales team right now. We need to expand that, pretty dramatically to support kind of the authorizations, that we, have coming down the line. And beverages, I think that's why beverages, known as one of the most challenging categories is because it requires, the largest kind of sales team to support, right? They're just very high velocity products relative, to other categories like personal care or condiments. And so your team really needs to be going into the store, every week, right? To get reorders, to get, displays and end caps and focus on merchandising. And so, yeah, it's really about continuing to develop the organization to support the ongoing growth of the business. I mean, we doubled last year, we'll double again this year, and I think we have the ability to just basically double every year from here. And so that requires kind of a ongoing kind of maturing organization, to be able to support that. And so I'm fortunate to have a team and an executive team that we've all worked together since 2019, and about a 40-person team right now, kind of that's working incredibly hard to support the growth that we see in this year. And it's really going to be about continuing to kind of build out the team to support what's coming down the line. But the most important thing is, we're seeing great results when we get on shelf, like we sell extremely well, right? And that's, the most important thing that you want to see. And overall, I think we're in basically year 5 or 6 of the development, of this broad relaxation space. And I think it's going to compound for the next 25 years, just like, energy drinks, has, over the past 30 years. And I think we're just kind of getting started. And I think the broader spaces too. I think you're seeing there's a lot of brands, in the different segments that, that we're playing in that, I respect and admire. And I think this is a rising tide will lift all boats, type of situation. So I'm also excited to kind of collaborate, with, other brands in the space to continue to drive this space, at retail.
For sure. When we spoke last week, I had said, Ben, you don't look like you've aged a day since we first spoke in 2019. And typically in the beverage industry, every year you age 5 years. So you seem to be doing pretty well for yourself, at least from a physical standpoint. Mentally, I hope it's just the same as well. But if you are looking at this as a 25-year, build out for a brand, I can imagine how you're taking it slow and steady, one day at a time.
Yeah, no, I might not appear that way, but no, it's definitely been a journey, and it's been very stressful at times, but I'm super proud of what we've built and the progress that we've made. And I think the smart bets that we've made too. Like I think we made a couple really smart bets that are beginning to pay off, and I'm excited for all that lies ahead, and really grateful for you to be along the journey too.
Yeah, I am as well. Thank you so much, Ben. Let's make sure that we're not 5.5 years in between our next conversation for Taste Radio, because I see really great things for Recess, and I'm just so excited for you and the team.
Thanks, man. It's been a great conversation.